There's a conversation happening right now about artificial intelligence that's missing something important. Everyone's talking about what AI can do, how fast it generates text, how accurately it analyzes data, how efficiently it handles repetitive tasks. But very few people are asking the question that actually matters to you. What becomes more valuable when AI handles the routine work? If you've been working in your field for 10, 15, 20 years or more, you've probably felt a strange mix of emotions watching AI capabilities expand. Maybe there's curiosity about what these tools can do. Maybe concern about what they mean for your role. Maybe frustration at being told you need to adapt or become obsolete by people who've never done what you do. Here's what we're going to explore in this video. Why your experience doesn't just survive the AI era, it becomes exponentially more valuable. We're going to look at 4 connected ideas that explain how mid-career and senior professionals actually have a unique advantage right now, not despite AI, but because of it. This isn't about learning to prompt AI better, though that matters. It's not about racing to become a data scientist overnight. It's about understanding how the fundamental nature of valuable work is changing, and why the judgment, context, and responsibility you've built over years of practice suddenly matter more than they ever have before. If this perspective resonates with you, if you're tired of panic takes and ready for a practical conversation about what experience actually means in this moment, liking the video helps it reach more professionals like yourself. It tells the algorithm that calm, thoughtful analysis matters. Let's start with the most important question. Why does experience matter more now, not less? Think about the last time someone junior asked you a question that seemed simple on the surface. Maybe they wanted to know which vendor to choose, or how to handle a difficult client situation, or whether to escalate a problem to leadership. You probably gave them an answer in 30 seconds, but that answer wasn't simple at all. It compressed years of pattern recognition, relationship knowledge, political awareness, and hard-won lessons about what actually works versus what looks good in a presentation. You made it look effortless because expertise always does. Now, here's what's happening with AI. These systems can execute tasks with remarkable speed and consistency. They can draft emails, analyze spreadsheets, generate reports, summarize meetings, even write code. And they're getting better at all of this, quickly. But there's something they fundamentally cannot do. They cannot carry the weight of accumulated judgment. AI doesn't know that this particular client needs detailed documentation, while that one prefers verbal updates. It doesn't understand that proposing a reorganization right now would be politically disastrous, even if it's technically correct. It can't feel the difference between a project that's temporarily behind schedule and one that's fundamentally broken. It has no sense of what matters and what doesn't in your specific context, with your specific stakeholders, in this specific moment of your organization's evolution. This is not a limitation that more data will fix. This is the difference between pattern matching and situated understanding. AI operates on correlations in training data. You operate with contextual awareness built through years of actually being responsible for outcomes. And here's why this matters more now than ever. As AI handles more of the routine execution work, the remaining human work becomes disproportionately about judgment calls, about deciding which AI output to trust and which to reject, about knowing when the standard approach applies and when you need to break the rules, about understanding not just what's technically possible, but what's actually wise given everything else happening. Think of it this way. When calculators became common, basic arithmetic skills became less valuable, but mathematical reasoning became more important, not less. because people could attempt more complex problems. When GPS became ubiquitous, memorizing directions became pointless. But spatial awareness and navigation judgment became more valuable for professional drivers who need to handle exceptions. The same pattern is playing out with AI and professional knowledge work. The mechanical aspects of many tasks, the drafting, the formatting, the initial analysis, the routine communications, these are increasingly automated. But the judgment about what to draft, what the analysis actually means, what needs to be communicated and how, who needs to be involved in which decisions, this becomes the entire job. And that judgment is built through experience. Not just time served, but time spent being accountable for decisions. Time spent learning which rules exist for good reasons and which are bureaucratic artifacts. Time spent building relationships that help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. Time spent making mistakes and integrating those lessons. You cannot prompt engineer your way to this kind of knowledge. You cannot train an AI model to replicate it, because it's not just information. It's context-dependent wisdom. It's knowing that the same situation requires different responses depending on dozens of variables that aren't written down anywhere. Mid-career and senior professionals often worry they don't have cutting-edge technical skills compared to younger workers who grew up with different technology. But here's what they're missing. The technical skills are increasingly the commodity part. What's scarce, what's becoming more valuable, is exactly what experience provides: the ability to make good decisions under uncertainty with incomplete information and real consequences. Organizations are just beginning to realize this. Right now, many companies are experimenting with AI by having junior people use it to be more productive, and that works to a point. But what happens when the AI generates 3 different strategic recommendations and someone needs to decide which one actually makes sense given the company's culture, competitive position, and unstated constraints? What happens when the automated analysis misses something subtle but critical? What happens when following the AI's suggestion would technically work, but would damage relationships or trust? These are the moments when experience isn't just valuable, it's irreplaceable. And there are going to be more of these moments, not fewer, because AI is expanding what's possible while simultaneously expanding the surface area where judgment is required. If you've been in your field long enough to have intuitions you can't fully articulate, to see problems coming before they fully materialize, to know what your organization really values versus what it claims to value, congratulations. You have exactly what becomes most valuable when AI handles everything else. The question isn't whether your experience matters. The question is whether you're positioning yourself to use it at the right level, which brings us to the next chapter. There's a mental trap that many experienced professionals fall into when they first encounter capable AI tools. They start comparing their output to the AI's output. They look at how quickly the AI can draft a document or analyze data, and they think, can I do that faster? Can I do it better? This is the wrong competition entirely. It's like a construction foreman watching a crane lift steel beams and thinking, can I lift that myself? The question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what the foreman's job actually is. You're not in competition with your tools. You never have been. Your value isn't in raw execution speed. It's in knowing what needs to be built, where the foundation is weak, what meets code and what doesn't, when to push the timeline, and when to absorb the delay. The crane makes you more effective. It doesn't make you obsolete. But it does change where you focus your attention. The shift happening now is from execution-level work to systems-level work. Let me explain what that means practically. At the execution level, you're drafting the client proposal, formatting the presentation, running the analysis, writing the email. This is where AI is genuinely transformative. These systems can handle much of this work competently, especially for routine cases. At the systems level, you're deciding which clients to pursue, what message the presentation needs to convey to move the decision forward, which questions the analysis should answer, who needs to be included in the conversation, and what they each need to hear. This is where human judgment remains essential. The professionals who thrive aren't the ones who can execute faster than AI. That's a losing battle eventually. They're the ones who smoothly move their attention up to the systems level. They're the ones who say, the AI can generate 5 versions of this in the time it would take me to write one. My job is to know which version actually works for this situation, what needs to be adjusted, and what it means for the broader strategy. This requires a different mindset. Instead of thinking, what do I need to produce? You think, what outcome do I need? And what combination of human judgment and AI capability gets me there effectively? Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're preparing a quarterly business review. The old approach. You spend hours pulling data, building slides, writing commentary. A week of work, maybe more. The AI-augmented approach. At the execution level, you have AI tools pull the data, generate initial slides, draft commentary. You review and polish. Maybe this takes a day instead of a week. The systems level approach. You spend an hour thinking strategically about what story this review needs to tell, what questions leadership is really asking, what concerns need to be addressed proactively. You use AI to quickly generate multiple frameworks and approaches. You select the strongest one, have AI develop it, but you're spending your time on the strategic framing, making sure the narrative is honest but positions challenges constructively, ensuring the recommendations connect to broader company priorities. The AI is infrastructure, like having a highly capable junior analyst, but you're architecting the whole thing at a level the AI cannot. The difference is profound. In the first approach, you're time constrained. There's only so much you can produce yourself. In the second, you're time constrained but more efficient. In the third, you're quality constrained. The question becomes how good you can make the strategy and messaging, not how much time you have to execute. This shift to systems-level work shows up everywhere. In software development, experienced engineers are moving from writing every line of code to architecting systems, reviewing AI-generated code for subtle bugs, making technical decisions about trade-offs. In legal work, senior attorneys are moving from researching every case citation to framing legal strategy, evaluating AI-drafted arguments for persuasiveness, making judgment calls about which precedents actually matter. In marketing, experienced professionals are moving from creating every asset to defining brand strategy, evaluating AI-generated content for authentic voice and positioning, deciding which messages to emphasize when. Notice the pattern: oversight, integration, decision ownership. These are inherently human functions that don't scale the way execution scales. AI can generate options. It cannot take responsibility for which option you choose. AI can analyze past patterns. It cannot decide when the future will be different from the past. AI can optimize for stated goals. It cannot question whether you're measuring the right things. This is where experience becomes operational. You're not competing with AI's speed or AI's consistency. You're providing something categorically different: situated judgment about what actually matters given everything else you know. And here's what's interesting. This shift actually makes work more intellectually engaging for many professionals. Instead of spending your expertise on routine execution, you're spending it on the genuinely complex decisions. Instead of being buried in tactical work, you have time to think strategically. Instead of producing one thing yourself, you're orchestrating multiple AI-assisted processes to achieve better outcomes faster. But this only works if you're comfortable operating at the systems level. If you're comfortable saying, "The AI did the first draft, now I'll make it actually good." If you're comfortable with your value being in decisions and judgment rather than in physical output. Some professionals struggle with this transition. They feel like they're not really working if they're not personally producing every deliverable. They mistake activity for value. But organizations don't pay for activity. They pay for outcomes. And if you can achieve better outcomes by orchestrating AI systems instead of doing everything yourself, that's not laziness. That's effectiveness. The question to ask yourself isn't, "Can I do this better than the AI?" It's, "Can I control systems that include AI to achieve outcomes I couldn't achieve alone?" And for experienced professionals who understand their domain deeply, the answer is almost always yes. Which brings us to a specific application that matters enormously: decision-making. If you're finding this approach helpful, if you value calm, practical AI discussions that focus on how experienced professionals actually work, subscribing helps you stay connected as we continue exploring these ideas. Let's talk about where AI actually changes how you work, not just how fast you work. And the biggest opportunity isn't in execution, it's in decision quality. Think about an important decision you made recently. Maybe it was hiring someone, choosing between strategic options, allocating budget, deciding how to handle a complex problem. How did you make that decision? If you're experienced, you probably did something like this. You considered the obvious options, thought through the implications of each, consulted with a few key people, weighed factors that mattered in your specific context, and made a call based on your best judgment. Maybe you had some data, but much of it was qualitative assessment and intuition built through experience. This approach works. It's how most good decisions get made. But it has limitations that are easy to miss because they're baked into how we naturally think. We tend to consider options that come to mind easily, which means we might miss better alternatives. We weight recent experiences more heavily than we should. We're influenced by how information is framed. We make decisions when we're tired or stressed that we'd make differently when fresh. We unconsciously favor options that confirm our existing beliefs. We're overconfident about how much we know, especially about complex situations. None of this makes you a bad decision maker. These are features of human cognition. Even highly experienced professionals are subject to these patterns. In fact, sometimes especially experienced professionals, because expertise can create blind spots. Here's where AI becomes genuinely useful in a new way. Not as a replacement for judgment, but as a structured thinking partner that can expand and improve your decision process. Let me show you what this looks like practically. Imagine you're deciding whether to pursue a major new client that would represent 30% of your company's revenue if you win them. Big opportunity, big risk. How do you think through this? The traditional approach. You discuss with your team, maybe run financial projections, consider your capacity, make a judgment call. The AI-augmented approach. You use AI as a thinking tool. You describe the situation and ask it to surface risks you might not be considering. It points out customer concentration risk, delivery capacity challenges, opportunity cost of other clients you'd need to decline, reputational risk if the project fails publicly, negotiating leverage issues when one client becomes that large. Some of these you'd have thought of yourself. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not as systematically. Then you can ask, what information would most reduce uncertainty about this decision? What questions should I ask the potential client? What internal capabilities should I verify before committing? What contract terms become essential at this scale? The AI can generate a structured analysis, surface considerations from multiple frameworks: financial, operational, strategic, risk management. It can help you think through second-order effects. If we do this, what else changes? What becomes easier or harder? What options do we preserve or foreclose? None of this removes your responsibility for the decision. The AI doesn't know your organization's culture, your team's actual capabilities, the subtle dynamics with existing clients, the broader strategy you're building toward. But it can help you think more systematically and surface factors you might have missed. This is AI's highest and best use for experienced professionals, expanding your thinking without replacing your judgment. Here's another example, different domain. You're a senior product manager deciding which features to prioritize in the next development cycle. You have limited engineering time, multiple stakeholder requests, strategic objectives from leadership, customer feedback, competitive pressures. Without AI support, you might make this decision based primarily on the loudest stakeholders, the most recent customer conversation, or your intuition about what matters. With AI support, you can quickly model different scenarios. What happens if we prioritize customer-requested features versus strategic differentiation? What's the likely impact on different user segments? Which choices preserve future flexibility, and which lock us into paths that are hard to reverse? What are we implicitly betting on about market evolution with each option? Again, the AI doesn't make the decision. It can't. It doesn't understand your company's positioning, capabilities, or culture at the level needed. But it can help you think through implications more thoroughly. It can challenge your assumptions by asking, if we believe X, what else would we expect to see? It can surface historical patterns. Similar companies that made this choice typically experienced these outcomes. The key insight is this: AI is very good at breadth and enumeration. It can quickly generate many options, surface many considerations, find many examples. Humans are good at depth and prioritization. You can quickly evaluate which of those options actually make sense in your specific context, which considerations actually matter, which examples are genuinely relevant. The combination is powerful. The AI expands the possibility space. You navigate it with contextual judgment. This matters enormously for decision quality. Research on decision-making consistently shows that better processes lead to better outcomes. Considering more options, explicitly surfacing risks, checking assumptions, thinking through second-order effects. All of these improve decisions on average, but they're cognitively expensive, which means we often skip them under time pressure. AI makes these better processes more accessible. You can have a structured decision analysis conversation in 30 minutes that might have taken days to coordinate with human advisors. You can explore more alternatives without the coordination cost of running each one by your team. You can stress test your thinking without the social cost of seeming uncertain. But here's what experienced professionals understand: that enthusiastic AI adopters sometimes miss. The final decision still requires human judgment operating in context. The AI's analysis is an input, not an output. A very useful input, but one that needs to be weighted against everything else you know. Sometimes the right decision is to ignore what the systematic analysis suggests, because you know something about the specific situation that doesn't reduce to analyzable factors. Maybe you know that a particular person's buy-in is essential and they'll only support option B. Maybe you have a strong intuition that the market is about to shift in a way that makes the conventional analysis obsolete. Maybe you're building toward a larger strategy that requires accepting suboptimal short-term choices. This is where experience and AI support combine most powerfully. You use AI to ensure you're not missing obvious considerations, to challenge your assumptions, to think through implications systematically. But you remain the decision maker, integrating AI's analysis with contextual knowledge, relationship awareness, strategic intent, and hard-won wisdom about what actually works. The professionals who get this right don't outsource their judgment to AI. They augment their judgment with AI. They become better decision makers because they have thinking support that helps them be more systematic while still applying contextual expertise that the AI fundamentally cannot have. And this improvement in decision quality compounds over time.
Better decisions lead to better outcomes, which teach you more, which improves your judgment, which helps you use AI support more effectively, which leads to even better decisions. It's a reinforcing cycle. The question isn't whether to use AI for decision support. That's increasingly table stakes. The question is whether you maintain decision ownership while using AI to expand and improve your thinking process. Which brings us to the final chapter: how to build a career that scales with AI over time, not just survives the current moment. We've covered why experience matters more as AI handles execution, how to operate at the systems level instead of competing with AI output, and how to use AI to improve decision quality while maintaining judgment. Now let's connect this into something more important: a long-term career strategy that gets stronger as AI capabilities expand. The professionals who struggle with AI are the ones trying to figure out how to protect their current role, preserve their current way of working, defend their current value proposition. This is understandable, but ultimately futile. The nature of work is changing, and trying to keep everything the same is just exhausting. The professionals who thrive are asking different questions. Not, how do I stay relevant despite AI? But, how do I become more valuable because of AI? Not, what will I lose? But, what becomes possible? Let me show you what this looks like as a career strategy. First, understand that your career value is shifting from what you can personally produce to what you can make happen through combination of your judgment and AI capability. This isn't about working less, it's about force multiplication. When you can orchestrate AI systems alongside human teams, you can operate at a scale and speed that wasn't possible before. Think about what this means practically. A marketing professional who used to manage 2 campaigns simultaneously can now oversee 6 using AI to handle execution while focusing their expertise on strategy, positioning, and creative judgment. A financial analyst who used to produce 1 model per week can now evaluate dozens of scenarios, spending their time on insight extraction and recommendation quality rather than spreadsheet mechanics. A project manager who used to coordinate 3 projects can now handle 5, using AI for routine communications and status tracking while focusing on risk management and stakeholder alignment. This is career leverage. You're not doing 5 times as much work. You're applying your expertise across 5 times as much scope. Your judgment becomes more valuable, not less, because it's now the constraint on what you can achieve. But this only works if you actively develop the skills that AI cannot replicate and that become more valuable as systems improve. What are those skills? Strategic thinking. The ability to see patterns across situations, understand second-order effects, connect dots that seem unrelated. AI is tactical. It responds to the problem as framed. Strategic thinking is about reframing problems, seeing possibilities that aren't obvious, understanding what's really going on beneath the surface. Relationship building. Everything important in organizations happens through relationships. Trust, influence, coalition building, knowing who really makes decisions, understanding unspoken concerns. None of this is automatable. AI can draft the communication, but it cannot build the relationship that makes the communication effective. Contextual judgment. We've talked about this throughout, but it's worth emphasizing. The ability to make good calls with incomplete information in specific contexts is human and experience-based. AI provides analysis. Humans decide what the analysis means and what to do about it. Creative synthesis. Taking information from multiple domains, combining it in novel ways, seeing solutions that don't follow from any single framework. This is human creativity operating at a professional level. AI can generate variations on existing patterns. It struggles with genuine conceptual breakthroughs. Ethical reasoning. As AI handles more decisions, the question of what should be automated versus what requires human judgment becomes more important. Understanding values, navigating stakeholder concerns, recognizing when efficiency conflicts with other important goals. This is increasingly central to professional work. Notice these are all capabilities that develop with experience. A 25-year-old can be taught strategy frameworks, but strategic thinking develops through repeatedly seeing what works and what doesn't, building pattern recognition through accountability for outcomes. They can be taught relationship skills, but relationship capital builds through years of consistent, reliable interaction. They can be taught ethical frameworks, but ethical judgment comes from navigating genuinely difficult trade-offs where values conflict. This is the career strategy. Double down on developing capabilities that become more valuable as AI handles everything else. And position yourself to use AI as leverage to apply those capabilities at greater scale. But there's a second part that matters just as much: managing your own sustainability. Here's what's easy to miss. As AI makes more things possible more quickly, there's an enormous temptation to just do more, take on more projects, pursue more opportunities, operate at higher intensity. And for a while, this works. You're more productive, you deliver more value, you get recognized and rewarded. But there's a trap here. If you simply scale up activity without changing how you work, you hit a new ceiling quickly. You become the bottleneck. Everything needs your judgment, your approval, your strategic input. You're operating at the systems level, but you're still personally involved in every system. This is exhausting and ultimately not scalable. The next level is building systems that partially encode your judgment, so they can operate with less direct involvement. This might mean developing frameworks your team can apply, creating decision criteria that handle routine cases, building processes that escalate only genuine exceptions to you. You're not removed from the work, but you're operating through structured delegation that multiplies your impact. This is where experienced professionals have an enormous advantage.
You can do this effectively because you know which decisions really need your involvement and which don't. You can create guidelines that work because you understand the edge cases. You can coach people through applying frameworks because you've internalized when rules apply and when they're the wrong approach. And this is also where AI becomes a capability multiplier, not just a task accelerator. You can build AI systems that incorporate your judgment patterns to handle routine cases, freeing you to focus on genuinely complex situations. You can use AI to help train your team by generating scenarios and examples. You can use AI to monitor for situations that need your attention while handling everything else systematically. The career that scales looks like this. You develop judgment and expertise through years of experience. You learn to operate at systems level using AI to handle execution. You use AI to improve decision quality. You build frameworks and processes that encode your judgment so you're not personally involved in every decision. You focus your direct attention on genuine complexity, strategic choices, relationship building, and developing others. This is how you avoid burnout while growing influence. This is how you remain relevant regardless of how AI capabilities evolve. Because you're not competing with AI, you're building a career that becomes more valuable as AI becomes more capable. The future isn't about humans versus AI. It's about humans who can effectively orchestrate AI systems versus humans who can't. And the humans who can are disproportionately going to be experienced professionals who understand their domains deeply enough to operate at the systems level. There's one final point worth making. A lot of discussion about AI and work is framed around threat and displacement. What we lose, what becomes obsolete, what's at risk. This frames the entire conversation defensively, but there's an alternative frame that's more accurate and more useful. Opportunity and expansion. What becomes possible when routine execution is automated? What can you achieve when your judgment can be applied at greater scale? What becomes feasible when decision support is always available? What career paths open up when force multiplication is the norm? For experienced professionals who've spent years building genuine expertise, this is actually a remarkable moment. Your judgment matters more, not less. Your experience is more valuable, not less. Your ability to navigate complexity, build relationships, make contextual decisions, and see strategic patterns. These capabilities are more differentiated and more valuable than they've ever been. The question is whether you're positioning yourself to capture that value. Whether you're operating at the systems level, whether you're using AI to amplify rather than competing with AI output, whether you're building a career that scales. If you've made it this far through this analysis, you're probably someone who thinks seriously about professional development and career strategy. You're probably someone who values understanding what's actually happening over reactive panic or uncritical enthusiasm. You're probably someone building for the long term. If this video helped you rethink your role in the AI era, If it gave you frameworks for thinking about how experience, systems, decisions, and career strategy connect, liking the video and subscribing helps the algorithm recognize that thoughtful, long-form content matters. It helps these ideas reach other experienced professionals who'd benefit from them. And it helps us continue producing this kind of analysis instead of just chasing whatever's viral this week. The AI era doesn't diminish experience, it elevates it. But only for professionals who understand what's actually happening and position themselves accordingly. You have everything you need to thrive in this moment. The question is whether you'll act on it. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, you'll probably appreciate our other content exploring how professionals can build sustainable, meaningful careers in a rapidly changing landscape. We focus on practical frameworks over hype, long-term thinking over quick fixes, and what actually works over what sounds good in headlines. See you in the next one.